Imagine living the life that you dreamed of. You have the perfect husband, the perfect ministry and job, the perfect children. You are happy and content. Now imagine that your world comes crashing in a one-day span of time. Your husband is told that he has stage 4 colon cancer and there is no stage 5. You have faith in God, though. You believe that he'll be healed, he will receive treatment, and he'll be fine. But imagine that those treatments do not work. Things get dramatically worse until you watch your husband take his last breath. Now what? What do? You just lost your husband, your ministry, your job, your income, everything, your home in 1 minute. You may never live out this situation, and hopefully you never have to. Yet you will know someone that loses their spouse and everything with that comes with that loss. It's important to know that you have a God-given responsibility to care for those people. I will tell you what you can do to help bring comfort in that time of loss. I was that woman. I watched my husband's chest stop moving. I sat in a chair that night at 27 years old and wondered what I was going to do. How was I going to find a job, a house? Where was I going to get an income? How was I going to take care of my 3 children? This social problem had hit very close to home. I walked that road, and I'm determined to do my part to help others who are now traveling that path. Christians, as a part of the church, have a responsibility to care for widows with love and a tangible support. I intend to explore 2 ways that you can care for widows, through emotional support and through financial support. We must help the widow emotionally as she goes through the grieving process. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 12:26 that if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. That's the New King James Version. When the widow hurts, the church should hurt with her. Yet it should not end there. The church must help her to find healing in Christ at a pace with which she is comfortable. In an article in the Public Health Nursing Journal by Mary Abrams, a study is presented on how a church body deals with grieving versus how it is done in the nursing profession. Abrams writes that scientific explanations and even emotional support fail to comfort individuals and families. Widows can find comfort for their grief in the church. The church is able to offer hope that the world cannot give. Christians can look at death as moving from one house to another, or as someone fulfilling the call that has been placed on their life, fulfilling their purpose. This was also from Abrams. Both of these pictures present death in a more positive light, or as a sort of completion of one's purpose. In this article by Mary Abrams, she explores the difference between how Christians cope with grief and the scientific basis for dealing with grief. She attempts to explain away some of the ways that Christians can deal with and cope with grief, yet it's clear that she cannot explain their hope in the midst of their joy and their sadness. The church has a responsibility to provide that emotional healing to widows. We must also help the widow financially. In a report called The Widow's Financial Guide that's published by Crown Financial Ministries, the author reports that most widowed women experience great financial difficulties after the loss of their husbands due to 2 things: a lack of knowledge about finances and a lack of good, unbiased counsel available to them. Women tend to be woefully unprepared for such a major upset to their lives. A statistic published by the Sisterhood of Widows says that 9.4% of widows over the age of 65 are living below the low-income threshold within 5 years of their husband's death. They went on to say that 80% of widows that are living in poverty were not used to being poor before their husbands died. This is a complete upset to their system. The Bible is clear about how the church should financially support widows. The early church appointed a special council. In Acts 6:3, there were 7 men that were to oversee the care of widows. This was a priority for them. 1 Timothy 5:3 says that we are to honor widows. In John MacArthur's Bible study titled Caring for Widows, he explains this verse and its implications. When Paul wrote that the church is to honor widows that are widows indeed, he meant widows indeed are to be distinguished from widows having financial means. The church is obligated to provide care for those who cannot care for themselves. The church has an obligation to support widows both emotionally and financially. It is a biblical mandate. The church is able to provide an emotional support and healing that the world cannot give. We must also adhere to Paul's instructions to Timothy, who was a pastor. The church must financially support those widows who cannot support themselves. Thus, as a Christian, you have an obligation to care for widows with love and tangible support. Think about what you can do to rectify this social injustice. Do you know a widow that you can begin to help? Does your church have a program to support widows, or can you start one in your church? Can you visit one who's lonely and hurting? Maybe you can provide a meal or do some yard work, just to sit and talk. Can you send a monthly donation to a widow's support group? How will you fulfill this biblical mandate?